Welcome to the Bender Continues podcast. Introducing our guest for today's episode of the Passion Project Physical Health, Brad Lokey, a seasoned professional in human performance, strength and conditioning, and overall physical health. Currently serving as the program director for the United States Army Forces Command, also known as FORSCOM, and Holistic Health and Fitness H2F system, Brad brings a wealth of experience and expertise to the table.
Brad's journey in the industry is marked by significant milestones, including his pivotal role in developing comprehensive strength and conditioning programs for nearly 20 varsity sports at the Division I level. Notably, he spearheaded the establishment of a new program for Stetson University, their football team. Prior to his tenure at Stetson, Brad held key positions at Cumberland University, Georgia Tech, and the University of Tennessee Chattanooga, where he honed his skills and knowledge in the athletic performance.
What sets Brad apart is his unique blend of expertise, experience, and having also served in the United States Marine Corps. We also thank him for his service. This background, coupled with his certifications from the National Strength and Conditioning Association and the Collegiate Strength and Conditioning Coaches Association, positions him as a remarkable authority in both collegiate athletics and military forces.
In today's episode, we'll learn about Brad's journey, learning moments, and the keys to achieving optimal health and fitness. Join us as we uncover his insights and best practices for physical well-being and performance enhancement. Welcome, Brad Lokey.
Awesome. Well, for starters, Coach Lokey, first and foremost, just thank you. Thank you for being with us here today on the Benders Continues podcast. Thank you for joining us. You know, we've been together 10 plus years. So having you as
Absolutely.
a guest with us today is super exciting for me, for us. You know, you played an integral part in our life at one point or another. So just thank you for being here again for a new path and a new journey for us. As we kind of get started, you know, just for our listeners out there and people who aren't as familiar with you as we are, maybe you could take us through a little bit of your journey through your career and where you're at today.
Absolutely. Well, first off, I'd like to thank God for the blessings He's bestowed upon my life and the opportunity and privilege I've had to be a coach and be part of all your journeys and multiple people's journeys that I feel like I've been able to have some impact on that. And in turn, they've also had a lot of impact on me. So the cliff notes of my journey really is I started as a high school Division I blue chip coming out of the state of Florida. Went and played some college ball out in the state of Missouri to a small school and didn't do too well my first year with academics and ended up in the Marine Corps. I had a broken education. It took me about 12 years to finish my bachelor's degree. And during that time, was always called back to training and always being around athletes and really just loved that process. So as I went back to finish my undergrad, I was able to actually keep my scholarship by being a weight room assistant. They didn't have a strength program at the school I was at. Got involved in that and went ahead and graduated. Then I had some broken time. I went out and just did all kind of trivial things and finally got my heart was called back to coaching. So I went back, I finished my bachelor's just to get my strength and conditioning certification. I loved being in the weight room at the time and training athletes. And then the ball started to roll. I got my first strength and conditioning job at Weber International. I'm extremely grateful for Coach Kelly and those guys down there for giving me that opportunity. I was actually hired as a true strength coach. Then actually was given an invitation to do my graduate degree while I was there. So I got the MBA. And at the time, I didn't realize how trivial and how important that was going to be in my life. I couldn't see it at the time. Didn't realize how important it would be not only just to be a director at the university level, but also later in my career to promote more corporate opportunities and even the tactical field. So very blessed for that. And once from there, went to the University of Tennessee Chattanooga as an unpaid volunteer assistant strength coach. Worked a lot of odd jobs because I sacrificed, and that's the path that I was chosen. From there, broke after about 2 years, looking for opportunities. I went to Georgia Tech and did my CSCCA apprenticeship, basically. Got my 540 contact hours there, got that certification, and then I was hired by Cumberland. And that was the second time in my career I'd been actually hired as a director. So went to Cumberland University, and I will tell you that was a very, very magical experience. We had a very winning culture there. Not a lot of equipment, very small space, but a lot of great student athletes, very clean kids as far as the way they were raised, the manners, the mannerisms, and grateful for Ron Pappen for that opportunity as well. That was really amazing. It was a great transition time in my life. And then Stetson called, and it was really strange. When I came to Stetson for the interview, I was pretty much told in the interview I was the guy. And it made me really nervous because I had been really happy at Cumberland and didn't know what I wanted to do. I had a fiance at the time, and we were having trials and tribulations of where we wanted to be geographically. So that was a challenge in itself. And, I made that decision and felt like I was called back to Florida. And what was strange, what really made the decision for me was the empty weight room, actually. When they showed me the floor space and showed me the budget, and told me I could build my own thing, and I knew what the budget was, that was it. Because for all this time I had been coaching and working, I had been doing it with very, very limited equipment and very small space. And I'm like, I've got a brand new weight room. I was like, it's done. Let's go. And that was the deal for me. So I signed, and plus it was being back close to my family. I had my sister and my mom and dad at the time still living right there in Central Florida. So it was nice to be able to reconnect with them. Both my parents are passed now, but it was really great to have those years back and be in that area for that period of time.
Coach Lokey, it's an incredible story, and it's interesting because Ryan Hinton, we first met 10 plus years ago, and you were
Absolutely
walking into Stetson, developing a program, acting as the director of strength and conditioning, and really taking over a program that was at the Division I level, but needed a pillar, right? Needed a foundation. And it's interesting, your background, you've been part of that journey. And you talk about walking through, where Stetson's football facility is going to be in the blueprint. I got to ask, what were you thinking in the moment, but also during that process, what were some of the challenges faced during that? And then ultimately, how did you overcome that?
Yeah, ultimately, I had been very fortunate being at smaller schools to where we didn't have a lot of equipment, or we didn't have a lot of access, and there wasn't multiple weight rooms, there weren't multiple strength coaches. So I had developed a few things that really helped me go through that process. One was the biggest challenge is always scheduling, right? You got 500 plus athletes, 21 teams at that level, and everybody's battling for priority of who gets in a weight room at what time.
Mm-hmm.
So I had developed a pretty efficient way. It wasn't, great for everybody, but it did work. So what we did is we set up a tier system between me and all the other sport coaches at Stetson, and the athletic directors, kind of helped us gauge the tier. If somebody felt like they should have been in a better tier or worse tier. But what we did is we used Google Calendar, and actually we opened up the dates, and they had like 30 days to battle for their positions, and it was kind of first come, first serve.
Wow.
Now there were certain sports that had priority, right? And it was obviously your bigger sports, men's, women's basketball, football. As you knew at the time when I came in, baseball was really big at Stetson.
Mm-hmm.
And softball, they wanted their piece of the pie, and there were a lot of female sports that wanted female participation in part of the pie. And I think one of the biggest challenges that really wasn't indicated to me, I felt like I really was hired to come aboard and be a director for the university, right? And I really feel like the football program looked at it more like, no, we need an independent strength coach to cater to us. And that did create some rift, right? And it created some trials and tribulations. And I think we did the best we could to grow with that. But battling for those roles was the biggest challenge. I had been pretty well prepared for that. Like I said, being at smaller schools, we had grown a lot as far as the amount of equipment and space and the way I was able to organize my training regiment. Whereas at smaller schools, I had to be a lot more creative with my training methods, how many guys were in the weight room at one time. It took more groups to get everybody through. And there were a lot of smaller sports that didn't get that opportunity. So that was something I feel like for me, I wanted to create that equality. I really wanted to gauge more toward that Title IX. I wanted everybody to have a chance at the weight room in that Division I experience. I didn't care who it was, what sport it was. And that was really important for me. And, in hindsight, that may be one of the fails, because I didn't cater to one specific sport or really try to gauge myself as a football strength coach. And I also think it made me a lot better as a coach later, though, to have so much more diversity in my athletic approach and my overall perspective of how to train athletes.
That makes a lot of sense. And I like that you said diversity, because you have a lot of diversity, not only within the sports arena, but also within the armed forces arena as well.
Correct.
And so there's literally dozens of different types of athletic programs that need strength and conditioning coaching. And then armed forces is a completely different angle. Are there similarities between building the programs and the structure for training athletic individuals with armed forces individuals, or are there completely different programs?
There's always a fundamental. And I think that a lot of coaches really overcomplicate things, right? You can get really advanced. There's a lot of techniques, but I think if you've not built fundamentals and basic form and technique and some of your just preliminary cornerstones, I think it's really hard to build a solid foundation off of any of that, right? So dealing with athletes, here's the biggest two differences. Athletes in general, well, let's start here. Generally, most of the people you work with in armed forces and collegiate are about the same age.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Same
Yeah.
age, okay? Yeah. However, there's two different types of maturity. With the soldiers or with the military personnel, they have gone through some type of indoctrination that's kind of gauged them to a different level of discipline, and their why is different, okay?
True.
But they're not necessarily as athletically gifted. So a lot of those basic foundation movements are very important. Whereas with the collegiate athletes, I've had guys that I could have asked to do a hopscotch on their pinky toe and flip on their head and spin around with 400 pounds on their back, and they could do it. It's like, wow, I've had athletes like that. And it's crazy because when you see people that really can't walk and chew gum versus, a great athlete, but it still comes down to, we talk about KISS method, right? Keep it simple, stupid. And I don't mean the stupid part, but it's like the basic fundamentals: squat, hinge, press, pull, carry. Those things are so instrumental, I think, in building great programs and having those aboard. Those are your similarities, but your biggest difference, I think, are different types of maturity and different types of discipline. A lot of people say that, discipline is a trait that if you don't lose, if you don't use it, you kind of lose it. I totally disagree with that. I think you learn it at some place in your life, going through hard things or challenges or trials or tribulations. And then I think it's something you could turn on or off. I really do. Because let's say you change venues or lanes in your life of something that you want, or something becomes more important. Like, so for me, I've been in a training conditioning hiatus for about 2 years now, but I've been focusing on a different aspect of my life. I've been focusing on my business. I've been focused on building a different financial portfolio. And that has been the concentration. I put a lot more effort into that. And guess what? It's been successful and it's developed. But yet in 2001 through 2004, I was getting ready for bodybuilding shows, and I had to drop, 25% body fat. So I lived in the weight room and, the perfect nutrition discipline. So I think there are different types of discipline that you can use in your life. But I think ultimately you learn that somewhere in that same time frame, that middle teen years, high school, college, that transition period. And some people get it and some people don't. But I think it really comes down to, what is your why and how bad do you want it? I hate people that make excuses for something they don't have. I really do. Because if you decide that you want to go out and make an additional income, well, guess what? You might have to work a second job. You're going to lose sleep. But that person goes, I can't do that because I can't lose sleep. Well, guess what? You're not going to have that additional funds, right? You got to be willing to make the sacrifices. Or it's like, hey, I want to lose 40 pounds. Well, what are you doing to get there, right? There's never a right time to have children. There's never a right time to get married. There's never a right time for a big purchase. There's always going to be life events in your life. So either A, you live in the moment, do the best you can to be flexible around those things and try to get it as close as you can. Or B, you decide to sacrifice and be 100% in for what it is you're trying to accomplish. So I think that's just to answer your question, the two big differences are just a discipline and maturity and how they're applied. It's not that one is more mature or less, or one's more disciplined, but it's how they're applied and the why. And the similarity is just keeping it simple, right? Like very, very basic. I think those become the staple of your programs. And then you can decide that you can do different things around that. With some of my tactical guys, we do, we'll include some gear carry. So they're actually wearing their gear, and then we're doing some weight training sessions with their gear on, or, we're doing a lot more rucking where they're carrying gear for an extended period of time versus, we're still doing tire drags, or maybe we're doing rope climbs. But in the weight room, it comes down to still those same basics. Whereas, during the condition phase, which you guys have been through with me, I get pretty creative from a tactical perspective. So, but, so I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. It sounds like there's definitely there needs to be a thorough understanding of that individual person, because you need to understand the balance of their physical abilities against their mental abilities, because one could be the driving force, but it could shape the program or shape the direction of their future, depending on what they're looking to with their why.
Agreed. And I think the why is so huge for, number one, a team. There's a team why,
Yeah.
and then there's an individual why. I think the team why will generally outweigh the individual why. You get that peer pressure, especially in a military setting where, some people go away and they don't get to come home. Right. And I've been fortunate enough to be downrange and learn that experience. Not saying necessarily it's a great one, but I've been fortunate enough to experience that and be able to talk from a place of authenticity to where, you develop a different relationship to where, okay, I'm not trying to win a game on Saturday. I'm literally, the win is to come home, right, and be alive and be healthy and keep all your limbs. So what are you playing for, right? What are you playing for? What's your training methodology, and why? What are you playing for? So that's a totally different weight and a different gauge. So for me, I think when we look at the why, I think the individual athlete from a collegiate perspective has a lot stronger why, but as a mission requirement, it becomes more prevalent with a military setting. But the one thing you always got to go back to too, and it's really interesting, the guys that are extremely committed in a tactical setting, they're the people that are married with families and with kids. It's not your young individual soldier. They may not be as cautious or as involved in the holistic health program because they're not thinking about that. But the person that's got the wife and the kids to come home, they're a lot more plugged in.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Now, you kind of brought up a pretty important topic that has getting an increased emphasis in just general life, but as it applies to fitness and your expertise is mental health. And so we're talking kind of about how these different professions and sports and military have different types of resilience, their why and stuff from the individual aspect. But from your coaching background, what kind of philosophy or psychological training do you integrate in your programs to try to build that mental toughness, to use different strategies in trying to elevate these athletes and military personnel to be able to accomplish their mission, like you've mentioned?
Younger in my career, I was able to do a lot more individually. At this stage in my career where I'm managing strength and conditioning professionals, and I have mental health care professionals of occupational therapy and sports psych and just different tools. First of all, I always think if you have the proper resources, make sure you're referring to the right professional. Strength coaches do not have a degree in psychology, and I want to be very clear about that. And I think that, there are times definitely we talk about building mental toughness. Well, I think that's different for everybody. And I also feel like as the dynamic of our culture has changed from the time that I coached you guys at Stetson to how I coach now is very different. The overall cultural barriers are very different. The social acceptance of that types of coaching is very different. And the overall acceptability. And it's going back to kind of I'm just going to caveat back. That's another thing too, when you talk about the differences of training tactical versus collegiate. In the collegiate setting, it's absolutely mandatory you guys come to weights. For the tactical athlete, it's not mandatory that they come to our program and work with us. Wow. They are pretty well encouraged, but it's not mandatory. They could go out and do their own physical training, and there are other ways to physical train. So there's some options there. So you really got to have that buy-in, right? And but with that said, just to answer your question, for me personally, I took a lot my style from the organization of the Marine Corps, and I will be very, very open about that. And the reason being, it number one delineates chaos. I think and I will use Stetson as a reference. You guys were probably the most disciplined team I've ever coached. And I say that across the whole school, because the very first year coming in and starting a culture that never existed in an environment that had never existed, the very first thing I did with every team that came in there was the discipline of the weight room, where things go, how the room looks, how it's set up, what's our timing, what's acceptable. Okay, we get to the end of the workout, there's 15 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever. Yeah, we start to laugh and joke and ha ha ha. But when it's business, right? And we did that. And I think we did a great job of being able to separate that. And that's a level of maturity in itself too, is being able to separate, okay, it's time to work, or, hey, I'm gonna go over to coach's office and eat a Snickers and clown for, a few minutes between classes. Okay, cool. And we did that too. Right. So that's my answer with that. Really, you got to refer the appropriate professional, but I do believe here's what it comes down to. In order to be resilient, you have to do hard things. You have to do hard things. There is no way that you prepare for going down range, being away from your family for 6 months, a year, eating different foods, not getting the right amount of sleep. You don't do that without, number one, doing those things to the best of your ability while you're home. And then secondly, occasionally through those evolutions, you're going to have to test yourself with those rigors to make sure that you are prepared. And that's also going to build confidence. And I think that's something I've always been able to do with a team setting. My goal was to get you guys to hate me more than you hated each other. I'm being honest, right? Hey, enemy of my enemy is my friend, right?
And there were points.
So if I got to a place where you guys hated me, that's right. But if I got to the point where you guys were like, man, forget Coach Lokey, but guess what? I got to take care of my brother next to me, and we got to get through this. We're not going to let him beat us today. Let's do that. Because you guys are the ones standing next to each other on the line on Saturday, or, whether it's volleyball, basketball, or whatever. That team environment is so much more important to me. And yeah, you're going to dislike me for the off season, but then there's a time that you come back the next year and you're like, man, you know what? I didn't get injured. I didn't have this. I'm able to get up in the morning and take my test at 6 a.m. because I had those hard sessions, or, hey, I'm going through this trials and tribulations with my wife or my kids. And you know what? There was this day I remember where Coach Lokey had us out in the rain, digging tires and, dragging a field with mud and ropes and everything else. And you're like, whoa, okay, I'm going to be all right today. So, whatever it is, I'm just giving some analogies. But so I hope that answers the mental question. I do a lot less with that now. I refer to the appropriate professional. We get a lot of input. We develop specific training methodologies or actual events that work around cognitive performance enhancement. We do a lot of puzzle challenges. You got this many pieces of gear you need to get over here. How do you use this? Who carries this? Just putting these plans together of the most efficient ways to get through obstacles. And that's all kinds of different things. We do this thing where we got like this big loop of keys, and only one key opens a lock. And we'll lock somebody in a wall locker. That's like a caged open wall locker. And your whole teammate, you're doing a workout, but you can go free the guy, and then you got to switch partners based on your fatigue level. But there's only one key on like 50 keys. So is it worth taking the time to let that person out to change for the fatigue? And they got to make those decisions. And we coach them and educate them. We do a lot of injury prevention type of drills. So like, say you had a man down in the field, well, now somebody's got to pick him up or carry his gear or different things like that. And that's an obstacle in itself. So it's definitely different challenges, but gotten a lot more holistic and utilizing the resources and providing those accordingly based on the scope of practice.
Nice. Yeah. I think the innovation that comes with that collaboration sounds wonderful, honestly.
It's pretty wild. You can get very creative. Mm-hmm. And it's neat to see the cognitive performance enhancement specialists plug in, the OTs plug in and develop these schematics. And then you come at it from a physiology standpoint, and all you want to do is you put them under duress, and then they got to think under that duress. And you're like, oh, wow, this is really cool. And some of the most simple tasks become just obliterating when you're fatigued.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's crazy.
Coach, you talk about those moments where making us hate you more than we hate each other. I don't know what James or Johnny's or maybe even Kenny's reactions were. The first thing came to me, all right, get outside, we'll run into the fence. And then we're going to run to the fence again and again. Like that memory at 6 a.m. just popped in my head right the hell now. Because yes, like,
to the fence.
Middle of the workout, like I'm already tired. And then y'all are fucking up. Get to the fence. And we all knew what that meant and how
Yes, sir.
and just the end of that fence run to paint the picture was uphill. And then you still had to come all the way back.
Yes.
I mean, James, John, I don't know if that same memory came in, but that just hit me.
I got the squad push-ups.
That's another good one.
Oh yeah, good squad push-up.
You took that right out of my mouth, Ryan. I was literally having
To the fence.
I'm like, but here's the best part. I was always in the 7 a.m. crew. So when I saw y'all running at 6 a.m., I was like, hey, we better be on top of what we need to be doing because it's going to get ugly. So we always had a little bit of a grace because we knew what was maybe coming.
Yeah, you already knew what was going on, right? Yeah.
Oh, too funny.
Yeah, man.
Well, hey, Coach, I think it's very interesting because you shared a few points that I think is very relevant to the next question that I have. But, when I think about, making sure the locker room's clean, making sure the weights are where they need to be. Hey, how was it before you got there, right? The little details, paying attention, obviously the culture piece, the why, and a lot of the things you've described. I'm curious, like, how did your military experience kind of shape your approach to the fitness and performance training? And would you say there's a certain percentage or a lot or maybe less currently where we are today?
The biggest thing, I was always very disciplined as an athlete. Okay. Whether it was high school or collegiate. And I even tried some semi-pro stuff and was able to actually lift at a pretty high level in my career. But that was not the hard part for me, and I enjoyed that training. And part of that, I struggled academically. I struggled really hard academically. I think it's interesting. We talk about, you talked about mental health and mental states. And one of the things you hear in a lot of, people coming up is not becoming a victim of their environment. And I can honestly say the environment of my childhood, I really don't think promoted the opportunities that I later was able to discover of getting a higher education, especially at the master's level. I think the military would probably have been seen, pretty early, but not the collegiate route. And so for me, my parents didn't take grades very seriously. So I wasn't really pushed in that direction until the letters started coming and the recruiting started coming. And then it was too late. I was already late junior with a 2.3 and I'm like trying to get to a decent college. Now, fortunately for me, I tested well and had some good SATs. But there's a lot of other opportunities. I wish I would have looked back. It's hindsight, it's done. But I think if the grades would have been better, it would have definitely changed the propulsion. And number one, level of school I played at. Number two is my investment in the education. I mean, like I said, it took me 12 years to get my undergrad. Now, 4 of that was spent in the Marine Corps, but it was just broken because I wasn't committed and I wasn't disciplined. But the Marine Corps itself really helped me develop some tools of time management, perseverance, the discipline of following through, getting through things that you started, regardless of how bad they were. Those are some tools that I got from the U.S. Marine Corps that I didn't have. And they're very, very important. And I keep them very handy in my toolbox now. But as far as, how I applied the Marine Corps or my military background to the coaching aspect, the only thing I really used from it was the team building. A lot of those challenges and a lot of those days, like I said, when my goal was to make you guys hate me more than you hated yourself, you got to realize I saw internal conflict. I would see 2 guys getting after each other or arguing or this or that, or you're not focused on the mission. You're not here to lift a day. You're here to, mess around. No, that's not when I would use those tools and those disciplinary infractions at that time to just create that culture and that discipline. Now, if you guys notice, and if you think about this, think about your first year with me, right? First year was by far the worst,
100%.
right? But then think the next year after. I didn't have to coach you guys. I mean, I coached you, but there was I didn't have to really instill the discipline of what the weight room looks like or where things go, or taking that time to, this is where you're supposed to be. This is when you're supposed to be there. And now guess what? I got 75 returning guys and they're telling the freshmen, this is not the place that we do that. This is not the place that we do that. And it's easy. It gets easier every year. So now I get to become softer, and I get to build better relationships.
True.
But the discipline and the standard and the culture is already set in place. And, I am slightly saddened. I didn't get to see some of you guys graduate. I was only at Stetson for 3 years. And the one thing that I do know, speaking to a multitude of athletes across multiple sports, and I'm talking hundreds of athletes, the coach that came after me, very great coach, did a lot of good things. But I can honestly tell you from every person I've heard internally and externally, the culture was never the same as what Brad Lokey set in those standards. And I am very proud of that. I'm very proud that I built the fundamental foundations that a lot of people followed and carried on. Yeah, they got coached. They went in, they did their lifts, they did all that, but it wasn't that staple to where I literally had other sport coaches send their teams to me for team building or for help in certain aspects of development other than just physical weight room. And I think that is a huge compliment to my style. But that overall style is just the organization and the team building aspect from the Marine Corps. But everything else was pretty much my own athletical development, different programs I had tried, different things I'd been through. I never, ever put a student athlete through a workout or program of 8 weeks or more that I had not already done trial runs on myself and lifted with and seen the progressions. And certain things fit different squads better in different ways. But that's what I think is just those are the two aspects I really say military training was the team building, camaraderie, and then obviously the organization, logistics.
I love that. That type of culture, I think for us, it's helped all of us as we've moved on into our careers too, because we're all in team environments and we know what a strong, tight-knit culture looks like. So I think in a sense, as we moved into the workforce, we've been able to take some of those characteristics. It's not directly fitness training in our occupations, but we're leading teams and we know what that tight-knit group looks like and the foundation of it, how to get there. And we can definitely look to you for that because, like you said, 3 years of that day in and day out, we had the opportunity to work with you and experience that firsthand. So for starters, just thank you on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you guys because, it's interesting. And this is what we talked about earlier with level of maturity, right? It is hard to spend 3 years with somebody that has that high of a demand and expectation on you.
Yeah.
Right. And then look back and be like, man, he really had our best interests in mind. Right. And it truly did. But I want you guys to be at a level of success and understand that it does take sacrifice and it takes that type of work ethic to make something special for yourselves and whatever that is you choose to pursue.
Yeah, that's awesome. Coach,
100%.
Everyone loves the genuine success story, right? And I know, I'm sure for you, whether it was Stetson or something different, there was that time out there from your coaching career where whether it was a transformation or it was that type of success story, something that carries with you. And it hopefully illustrated the impact of how proper training, how conditioning, had that positive impact on an athlete's performance or even their well-being. So when you're talking about your career, you're talking about your history. Is there that type of success story, that type of moment that stands out to you that is an example that you'd like to share with individuals? And if so, would you be open to sharing that with us?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a few things. So I'm going to touch on one really major event. I was an assistant coach in waiting at the University of Tennessee Chattanooga. And I had been there for 2 years, and I was definitely the vote to get the next open position as an assistant. And right as it was happening, there were some rumors at University of Tennessee Chattanooga about Title IX equality. And I actually got passed over for a female to take that job. And I had been grinding day in, day out, putting that in. And I could be salty about it, but I'm not. I'm really actually happy because at that moment that actually springboarded me to start putting in applications to go to a major Division I university. We're talking Power 5 schools and, do an internship or an assistantship or something of that nature. And, I went to Georgia Tech and, a lot of people don't know about the history of Georgia Tech, but there are some things there that are extremely special. It's a really special program. Number one, when you talk about Pop Warner football, the real Pop Warner coached at Georgia Tech. It is the oldest field still played on today in the National Collegiate Facility that's actually played games on. It's called Grant Field. 4 national championships. Bobby Dodd, just the history there is very rich. And I remember when we as interns, we got walked through their history / trophy room and their track and field stuff and their football stuff. And I was like, whoa. And I remember saying to myself in an arrogant manner when I left, I said, I really felt like if you can coach at Georgia Tech, you can coach anywhere in the world. I really felt that way. I had a great mentors, Louis Corrala, Neil Peduzzi, those guys, they really invested in us and me. I was in a unique situation as an intern because I'd already built a lot of debt to income ratio, and I had to work still, whereas a lot of interns didn't have that. So I wasn't putting in as many hours in the weight room as some other interns. And I know that was frowned upon by some of the assistant coaches, but I remember very specifically Neil Peduzzi really understanding my level of maturity, where I'd already been as a coach, because I'd already had my master's. I'd already been a head strength coach, so he understood more my why, right? And kind of gave me that flexibility to do that. But he also gave me a little bit of additional trust. I mean, there'd be some star players that maybe couldn't make the standard workout times because they had tutoring, and they would come in individually. And I always ended up getting those personnel. I also worked with a few other sports. I got to see swimming and diving and cheerleading, as well as softball as well. So, at that level, I think that was really important to be exposed. And then obviously, man, there's not too many more places more magical on a Saturday night than right there, I-95 downtown Atlanta. Man, it's crazy. Mm-hmm. So that's a big deal. And then, that was very special. And then obviously the relationships that, I've been able to build, and I want to just touch with you guys a very special situation for me, and specifically with you and your wife, Ryan, is when I came to the wedding for you guys, it was so strange because I was there to be there for you guys and be there as part of that celebration. But what was strange, and I didn't mean this to happen, but it turned into a amazing affirmation of the impact that I made, because there were so many athletes there from so many different sports, and the conversations and the thanks and the gratitude that I received really blew my mind. And that was the first time I ever saw like my overall impact. And it was humbling, number one, but number two, man, I was at a kind of a bad place in my life then anyway. And it was just, I really needed that affirmation. And, you guys, number one or two athletes that I had, impact on, but also had a great impact on me. As you know, Morgan, she worked as an intern in the weight room. And, I think she may have had a bigger impact on me than I had on her, because I learned from you guys every day too. And there's a different thing. We talk about seeing through the eyes of the youth that you work with, right? It keeps you young. There's different perspectives, new ideas, new ways of thinking. You start to question your methodologies on, are you starting to be like a dinosaur, right? Like you start thinking like that. And so that in itself, and the reason I just referenced that, because there have been other things like that in my life, but man, y'all were like 30 Stetson deep. Like, at a wedding, and like they're like 5 sports and I'm like, whoa. This was crazy, because like literally everybody from every sport just came up. Coach, I want to say thank you. I mean, the parents, I've got parents pulling me to the side and just being like, I'm so grateful for the opportunity, or for what you've done with my son or daughter. And man, I left that place like cloud you guys, for the wedding. But man, that was just that was pinnacle, man. That was pinnacle. So thank you guys so much for that. It's so humbling and just so grateful for those opportunities. But it is things like that no matter where you work, and this always goes to the how much is your time worth when you talk about getting paid in a career, or what's your value, and those are things you can't buy. I don't care if it's a $400,000 a year shrink coach job or, you know, 100 or 33,000. I don't care what it is, because I didn't make a lot of great money at Stetson. I mean, it was decent for the time, but you can't buy that. And there's no price that I can ever put on those types of experiences. Again, just extremely grateful for being part of those journeys.
One of the best parts about that from our perspective, with it being our wedding, I can't remember, James, Johnny, Kenny, if we shared it with you, but we were like, we're not going to tell anyone. Like, we're just, everyone is going to be, we're not telling anyone that coach is showing up. Like, we know he's showing up, and we're not inviting you for the aha. Like, we want you there as someone who's been impactful in our life. But we knew
part of the family,
with the crowd what was going on. So just, that is awesome that was kind of its own side story of the wedding. Yeah. And James, Johnny, again, I don't remember if we shared that with you or if you had that aha reaction. And if so, I mean, feel free to just jump in to share that other side of the perspective. We got coach's perspective. So I know it's kind of a segue, but why not?
Well, when you said that was your result of the wedding, it gave me chills, because I think that when you go into a program, and when we're so young, I mean, at the time we're what, 18, 19, 20, 21, maybe 22 years old in some cases, right? So we're young. We don't look at it in any long-term beneficial aspect, but looking at the things, more of the characteristics, the traits, the behaviors, the dedication, the determination, all of these characteristics and traits that are crucial, but unknowingly seeing them and how they affect us today at 30 years old, 10 years later, is very eye-opening. And when we're going through all these, major life events with each other, we have an opportunity to see this in a larger perspective, because there's a lot of people in the room, like you said, but it's really impactful on what you could do to someone's life at that age, and how much of an impact you make on their life for literally forever.
And I just want to reverse that for reciprocal purposes too, because I don't think a lot of coaches realize, and then they do, because you always hear them like, oh, it's for the kids. But one thing that's really interesting to me, and this is every career, right? You always hear people talk about standing on the shoulders of the giants that came before them, right? You always hear that, right? That's a big cliche. They're talking about the coaches and the mentors that they had, right?
Yeah.
But what I found in my professional career that's even way bigger than that are the people that actually are under you, like your interns and your student athletes and your assistants. And I'm going to tell you why. I've had interns and assistants that were putting in their own time. They weren't getting paid. Their gas, they're driving from, I had a kid that was coming from Orlando, Carlos Cabrera. He's spending his own money, coming over to Stetson 4 or 5 days a week, putting in his own time. And, people that followed me, Jared White came down from Tennessee to coach for me. And I'm talking minimal money, to follow me on that journey, to be part of that. And I always kind of chuckle when I go to these big conferences and I see all these, thank you for so-and-so that was, my mentor or my head guy. And I'm with that. I get that. But to me, it's the people that believed in you and followed you, that invested in your success, because there's no way I get to where I'm at and have the opportunities, because all that work that they did, all those positive interactions they had, all those coaching methodologies they put on the floor, those basically went with my name. Like, right. It just endorsed me, and it helped me grow through their works. And I'm so grateful for all my interns, all my assistants, all my student athletes, and the people that put into those programs and invested in me. And we're not talking about any name of school. We're not talking about a program. We're talking about investing in Brad Lokey personally to help me get to where I'm at. Now, everybody's got their own why, but I am extremely grateful and attribute the countless hours and sacrifices those individuals made for us to be here.
Yeah. And honestly, I think a lot of us, we got to watch those assistant relationships and things that you kind of developed in the weight room as we were being taught by them. I remember being taught by Morgan in the weight room.
Right.
And I know I specifically kind of watched how those relationships were and how things kind of unfolded. I mean, look at, we still talk to Josh out of that, and
Mr. Roberts.
yep,
Yes, sir.
And you know, we've seen the relationships kind of foster over, and the leadership that you gave them too is something that was eye-opening to me, and actually something that I've taken into my work relationship, and kind of seeing how you're training the person, even though they're underneath you, but you're training them to take your role.
Absolutely.
And instill.
If I got fired tomorrow, can you step up and do
Yep.
my job? Absolutely.
And there were some instances where you had to have them step up and take the reins on some of our workout sessions. So it was really impactful to see not only what you were instilling in us and in the program, but also how you were taking the program itself to the next level through the staff that you had brought on.
Right.
And it was really, really impactful. I actually was reading some of your stuff on LinkedIn recently about talking about all the different assistants and coaches that you've worked with over the years. And I'm just curious, I mean, with some of these coaches, what are some of the most impactful things in relationships, and how have you seen them progress in their career by just being able to be a part of it?
First of all, it's just, it's awesome to witness, right? Because you don't know what impact you have. And people go on and they leave your program and you're wondering what seeds you planted or didn't, or, and, I've got throughout my history, there's several guys that have their own personal training businesses or working personal trainer, physical therapist. They've gone on to just do a multitude of different things. Very special young lady that used to play softball for Stetson. I'm not going to mention her name, but she's her own entity within the human resources world right now. You guys probably knew I'm talking about. She's Central Florida, but she is a beast. I mean, and I remember, she had an injury that took softball away from her. And it was a very impactful story for me. It touched me very deeply, and I'll never forget the conversations and life lessons I got from that young lady, where on a dime, you're like you said, 17, 18 years old. And the one thing you've done your whole life, as long as you can remember, that you are definitely in love with, is just taken from you. How do you transition that? And I sat there and I thought about it, man. If I lost my legs tomorrow, what would I do? Right. Like, I'm a squatter. I like to squat. So, right? You take that from me. I mean, what's left? But and to watch her at that age be able to go through the process of changing her why. And it was hard for her. There was definitely trials and tribulations, but to see that and know that mental resiliency and watch that, and then also watch her utilize that story and that testimony to impact other athletes, to see her now and the level of success she's having is just like, yes, that's what it's really about. Right. Same thing, with a few other individuals, just they're doing, number one, what they love to do. They're very happy in their careers, and we'll talk about families too, for like you guys that are, married or have kids. I think that's something that we all want, is a legacy, right? There's nothing that I can honestly, you're not there, right? So you got some kid that you coached, or an intern, or an assistant that you had at one time, and they're sitting at the dinner table one day and their kid's being a pain in the butt, and they go, I remember this one time I had this coach. And whatever story comes out of their mouth, you're like, it's going to be good. But yeah, we went outside and we did squat push-ups 400 different ways till Sunday, and then you're telling these stories. But I think that legacy, and it's not even the mention of the name, it's just the reality of being so integrated at some small facet of their life. And I think we all seek that as professionals, is creating some form of legacy. So I think that's the biggest comment I'd like to leave on that, is just, trying to become part of other people's stories and living through them vicariously. And, that might be, your name might be mentioned, maybe not, but it's a story, and it might only come up twice in their life. But how many people are you able to, have that type of overall just resonancy with, just have that resonate. And that's the thing I love, because people always ask me, if you could pick your top 100 athletes that you've ever coached, who would you pick? And I'll be like, I could, because everybody has a different impact. And it wasn't whether they're a great athlete or had different workouts. I had athletes, and I'm going to be honest, I hate to use the word, but they were pretty much turds. And what I mean by that, I don't mean that they were good students.
Yeah.
Maybe they were good athletes, but they messed up for everybody. Why can't we have nice things? Because this guy can't show up on time. This guy can't get it. He's showing up for the game and he didn't bring his cleats. The guy, he forgot his helmet on the bus. Like, you know what I'm talking about. They're out there, right? And it doesn't matter what organization you are in. There's always going to be that person.
Yeah.
Well, you got to overcome that too. Right. And how do you do it? Do you put your hand on their back and pick them up? You try, but at some point, not everything's for everybody. You can't please all the people all the time. Now, I got people out there that don't like me. I understand that. And one of the most recent big leadership things that I can tell you guys that has come to me in the last year and a half, what other people think of me is not my business. You guys, if you haven't heard it, you need to check it out, because it's not my business.
Mm-hmm.
I do the best I can every day to make the most impact and have meaningful relationships, develop people. I am very demanding. I do have high expectations. And, if that's not the environment you want to be in to grow and be driven to be better and be more successful, then, I may not be the right fit for you, and vice versa. And that's okay. But that's kind of where we're at with that.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing all those memories and stuff. And I just want to say thank you just from my own personal perspective, because I like to say that you were actually one of my first mentors. Just the coaching that you gave me in the weight room. We've had a lot of one-on-one sessions where I came to you and, kind of just asked you, like, what the whys on why are we doing these certain things? What's the movement pattern supposed to look like? How can I improve? And you always open those doors. And because you open those doors as a leader, it made it easier for me to come to you. And now I try to emulate that and kind of search for other mentorship like that as well. So I just want to commend you for that and say thank you for kind of opening that door for us and keeping that door wide open.
Well, from you specifically, and I hate to get off on another tangent, but you had a very, very specific situation with your injuries.
Yeah.
Would you like to dig into that a little bit? Because again, I know we had so many conversations, but you were in a situation that I felt was, I guess, at times critical, right? I wasn't worried about you being a great football player. I'm worried about you. Are you not going to be in a wheelchair at the age you are right now? Right.
Yeah.
And that was way more important to me.
Yeah.
And I think we had those conversations.
We did. And you helped me through that. I know it was definitely a mental battle. Any injury that any athlete really sustains can be heart-wrenching and just a gut punch. And when I broke my neck, I mean, it was the strength staff, the training staff, even just coaches in general and the teammates. I mean, everything came into play. But yes, you helped me out a lot through that process. We worked on some stuff and we had to get innovative. I mean, not many people go through neck injuries and how do you come back from that?
Right.
And I mean, hey, we did a lot of neck workouts too. We definitely implemented, and I know we kind of expanded that process after the fact too, because obviously it was a learning moment. So the program gets better even out of, a glass half full mentality there. It's actually more glass half empty or glass half, full. Sorry. And we kind of propel forward there, the silver lining. So that was a fun one to go through. It was a crazy 9 months.
Yeah, and just to commend you, man, and the discipline and your commitment to be able to get through it. I think, I watched you with trials and tribulations and questioning, even at times we talk about faith, right? You question your faith. Why, everybody's like, why is this happening to me? And I don't think you really went through those moments. I'm sure you did privately. But, I think you did a great job of just being a strong teammate and being a leader by being there. I mean, what were you able to contribute? Well, you contributed the discipline of showing up. You contributed the discipline of showing trust in your teammates and your staff and the people around you to still be part of that. You could have easily been like, man, I'm injured and I'm not going to be at practice today, or I'm not going to come to the weight room. And anybody would have given you that out. You had that out, but you showed up, man, and you saw it through. And that work ethic is just absolutely impeccable, man. So thank you for that.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
That's something that James always had, though, and he keeps it. He's a hard worker. He's dedicated, and he's got that. So it's instilled in him. It's in his blood.
Yeah.
Do you miss your neck brace?
I still have it. I've got it. It's
Okay.
every Halloween.
Okay.
Just every now and then.
Every Halloween. All right.
Every now and then I
Sorry,
bring it
bad
out.
joke.
Coach, you know the
Bad
story. He got his wife with the neck brace. Like he doesn't get
Yeah.
married.
Did he?
doesn't get
Yeah.
married without the neck
But
I
brace.
think
empathy
so.
play there.
I might have some sympathy there.
Oh
Nice.
my
Yep.
gosh.
Yep.
Nice.
Oh, yeah, I whip
That's
it out
awesome.
every now and then. It's a personal possession that I will keep for the rest of my life. That is for sure.
I got you. Not always good, but sometimes good.
And don't worry, I made sure to wash those pads. It does not smell.
Okay. That's funny, man. He used the neck brace to get the
Yep,
wife. I gotta
yep.
remember that. That's hilarious.
Hey,
That's awesome.
Coach, I think one thing that for those listening and tuning in, I think the one thing that a lot of people can really see right from the bat is you talk about relationships, you talk about building culture, care, and impact on others. I think you have much gratitude and you give a lot of recognition to those and the impact others have had on you. And I think that's a very strong leadership characteristic, right? So I'd like to ask, if you were to talk about just leadership as a whole, it being important, of course, but what is your preferred leadership style? And then to summarize it, like, what do you think are the most significant qualities just in a leader, specific maybe to human performance or just in business or as a whole?
Okay. So in general, my standard style is actually laissez-faire with my teams now. With that said, here's how I kind of handle that. When we do an onboarding, I want to bring someone in. I want to tell them what the overall mission is, right? Whatever that is in any environment, business, football, sports, tactical, doesn't matter. This is the mission. This is how your performance will be evaluated, right? These are your expectations and these are the demands that I will place on you. I let them try to be as transparent as possible in that laissez-faire. And then from then, I trust that their professionalism and their scope of practice. First of all, I hired you to do your job. I want you to be, if you're the physical therapist, I shouldn't be telling you what I think is physical therapy. That's not my job. I hired you to do that job. Now, when you don't meet the expectations, the demands, or you're not meeting the metrics of your evaluation, then we're going to have a different conversation. And then I become a little bit more, I go from a laissez-faire to a coaching, right? So I go into the coaching. Where are you having deficiencies or discrepancies? What can we do to get them better? How can I help you get better? And then we literally go into that kind of autocracy, right? Where now I have to start micromanaging you because you are failing. Hopefully you never get to that. And in some cases, when people get to the coaching phase, it's not for everybody. I'm going to be honest. Okay. I'll give your team as a great reference. Out of that team of 100 and say 60 men that we had for 3 years, however many we had attrition, I can honestly tell you there's probably 50 men in that weight room, or in that team that I can honestly say were coachable, right? Mm-hmm. Are you coachable? I think that's the best compliment anybody can get at any age, that you can still learn, that you can be open to new ideas. And it is hard because when you have success too, you can have success from bad habits. Some people just get great luck. Well, why am I going to change what I'm successful at if it comes easy for me? Right? Mm-hmm. Well, maybe you're doing it the wrong way. Maybe you're doing it for the wrong why. I don't know, but that's something I battle with because I have been pretty successful. One of the most interesting things about my career is I've actually never been a paid assistant ever. Wow. I've always been the top guy, always. That's hurt me in a lot of ways because nobody's able to vouch for me until you get to your 4th or 5th position where you've actually, people see the resume and know that, hey, this guy is willing to step out and take a chance. So those are my 2 leadership styles I really prefer, is laissez-faire and the coaching. However, I believe it's results driven, right? So that's very important. I think we got to get results. I don't think you just go there to do nothing. And I want to win. I like to win. Yeah. So that's the hard part, man. I want to win. I want to be and I want my team to win. I want the team to be on the stage, getting the awards and doing their thing. So that's important. Life lessons as far as what's really the most important things to leadership. Got a great mentor that I've known since I was at University of Tennessee Chattanooga. Is a gentleman by the name of Matt Poe. He's a strength coach up in the Nashville area. And one of the things that he started to implement and really push on me early was create separation. 2 words, create separation. So what separates you from everybody else, right? Every strength coach, every professional's got the masters or has the education or the degrees, or all those things are simultaneous, like, right? Those are entry level. You got to have those to get the job. But what makes you separate? And I can tell you, number one is be a leader. What does that mean to me? You got to do the hard things, and you got to be there when nobody else wants to be there. And I think it's following a way against the odds. Like, I've had people in my own personal life, I'll never forget when I went to Georgia Tech, my own family, my mom, my dad, my sister, some of my closest friends are like, why are you going to do an unpaid internship? You already have a master's degree. You've already been a head strength coach. Why are you going backwards? And they think you're crazy. And, it's interesting because in your mind, you start to maybe question why you're doing it. But I'll tell you this, that's being a leader. Being a leader, showing up when there's adversity, there's sacrifice, and there's challenges, but going against what everybody else is telling you because it's what's in your heart and what you've been called to go and do, right? You've got to listen to that voice. And sometimes it's going to cost you, it can cost you a lot of things. There's a lot of sacrifices. People walk away from money. People walk away from relationships. People walk away from careers or titles or stigmas to follow, what they believe is their why. And I think if you're able to do that, if you're able to just separate yourself from others and not necessarily worry about what other people think and create that mark on yourself to where it's like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to follow through with it no matter what. And you're able to do that time and time again. I think you do become and have great leadership skills. So with that said, through all those things, those trials and tribulations come. So the number one pillar to being able to separate yourself and being able to be the leader is definitely you're going to have strong perseverance for sure. You're going to have to go through some things that are going to be very uncomfortable. One of the jokes I make now, and everybody laughs, I go to these conferences every year. And one day of every conference, I show up in a really nice suit, shoes, pants, slacks, tie, whole deal. And there's not another single strength coach at any of these conferences that you'll ever really see in a suit. You'll see some of the vendors, but you don't see it. And the coaches are always like, man, why are you wearing a suit? And I'll literally look at them and say, why are you not?
I love that.
Why are you not? Because I'm separating myself, right? Like, everybody in that room can be like, oh, well, you're inappropriately dressed because you're at this level. But I guess what? Everybody that I've run into, they remember. Mm-hmm. And whether that's good or bad, right? Maybe it's a bad thing too, but they do remember. You have created a separation, right? So for me, I don't do it for them. I do it because, like I said, what other people think is none of my business. But I know this. I know I work at an executive level. I know that I'm the person that's making those executive decisions. And I feel like I need to be dressed in a business manner appropriately to speak or deal with anybody, right? So in that suit, I can talk to the guy that's a strength coach that's moving 700 pounds, but I can also talk to the guy that's got the multi-billion-dollar businesses that's selling barbells all over the world. And I'm very comfortable in either. And I think it's really hard too, because coaches, they get to a place in their career. Well, how do you make the jump from the weight room to the boardroom? You're not ready for the boardroom because you won't even put on a pair of slacks and a polo at a professional conference.
Yeah,
true.
That's my opinion, but that's something I've been doing for the last 15 years. And it's funny. I have a reputation for it. And like I said, I don't care if it's good or bad or indifferent, but people always ask me, Coach, why are you wearing a suit? You shouldn't be wearing a suit to this conference. Whatever, you're overdressed. You're never overdressed. You can never be overdressed. You can be underdressed, but you can never be overdressed. So that's just, again, that's creating a separation. But the perseverance, I think, is the key, man. If you can't be rebuilt if you can't be broken. And the problem is, man, everybody's going to get broken at some point in life. There's
Yeah.
going to be something that is going to humble you, that is going to break you. And you've got to be able to start from scratch. You got to be able to start, say you got, I'll use James for a minute. James is a strong guy. I mean, his freshman year, he definitely got into weights, got moving some weight, then to have that neck injury, and then basically plummet back to an atrophy and a weakness to have to start all over, maybe even weaker than he was before he got there. Man, you got to be a strong guy internally to do that. And it's not about your physical characteristics, man. That's something that is a totally different animal. And that's the perseverance, and I talk about, like we said, the other young lady, softball player, had the opportunity where she couldn't play again. And that's a different adversity, man. That's something that, like I said, you gotta be perseverant, man. And I think all leaders, good, bad, or indifferent, I think if you get to that place of what does a leader do, I think that's the thing, man, is being able to be at the very bottom of the barrel and get out. And don't be the crab in the barrel, right? Don't step on anybody else to get where you're at. I don't have to talk bad about anybody. I don't have to, I don't do that, man. And there's been some people that, have definitely not been in support of Brad Lokey, but for me, I just keep moving because I'm going to support others, and eventually I think it comes back to you.
I like your thoughts on the topic of separation, and what comes to mind is your current position, and I think debatably one of the most important areas probably in the entire world to create separation from the United States of America to everywhere else in the world is our military, and how we create separation to become the best of the best is done with the programs that are instilled into the people that are actively working in the military. And as the program director of the H2F system, what innovations or initiatives are you most excited about in the realm of fitness and wellness within the military? And then how do you see that landscaping evolving over the coming years? Because as you said earlier, what you taught 10 years ago with us in college is drastically different than what you teach today. So fitness and wellness continuously changes and evolves.
Well, first of all, it's the availability of scopes of practice and resources. So we have multiple professionals that are available. We have the dietitian, we have the cognitive performance enhancements, the occupational therapist, the physical therapist, and all of those different venues, the strength coaches, the athletic trainer. So all of that being available, you look at it and it's very much like a Power Five human performance system, right? Like you have all those resources. But what is amazing is I've been on this project since its birth and inception. Before it was actually called H2F, it was SRTP and SRTP2. And at the time, I was not working for the government. I was actually working as a contract program management. And we were able, when we first started this, it was only 4 strength coaches at 4 different locations geographically. And now we're at 53
Wow.
different H2F brigades
Wow.
in the United States Army.
Crazy.
And eventually it's going to grow to 111. That's the projected program development for that. So I've been able to watch that growth come all the way through from start to finish to where we are now and continually. I mean, we're about to go overseas next year with, units overseas. So that's pretty awesome. We've been able to create so many jobs that never existed in space at decent salaries and life balances. I think that's one of the hardest things as a collegiate strength coach and athletic trainer. There's no life balance, man, I can tell you that it's a grind, at Stetson and other stops, it's a lot of times 80 hours a week, legitimately. Your summer's taken up because you got kids in, you're not getting vacation. Your winter breaks are actually basketball. I remember sitting at, basketball tournaments literally on Christmas Eve, not with your family, not with those things. And so being able to have that life balance, I think, in the tactical setting is very nice for our human performance professionals. And then also, just the availability of jobs. There's so many more jobs now than there was when I was coaching, to where, you can get a nice salary and good job through the tactical setting, whereas collegiately you may not be able to find that. And good news is, because of the advocacy and what we've been able to push, now the collegiate endeavors are starting to understand that, and now that value is starting to become greater.
Yeah.
You may have less numbers, but the people that are competing are getting better salaries and better benefits with better life balances. So I think that's the big thing. I've really become an advocate of the human performance, but we've grown the program. Like I said, we're at 53 of 111 units right now.
Wow.
The biggest thing is reducing overall injuries, and this is the same for collegiate athletes. I think it's interesting. We want to see people go through their military career, whether it's 4 years or 20 years or whatever, and when they get out, still be able to go home and play pitch with their kids in the front yard, right? And go to the barbecue and be comfortable and move around. And those are the fundamentals that I think, are really going to project us forward. There's a huge crisis in the United States too with disabled veterans, and the cost to the United States of being able to maintain their medical when they get out. And that's going to make a huge reduction in those overall costs because they're going to be healthier getting out. Plus, it invades, or not invades, it's not the word. It impacts the family unit too, because now the holistic stuff is being taught to the spouse, right? Like the nutrition is being taught to the spouse, or the implications of exercise on the human body. It's being now more promoted in the house, and everybody's kind of being able to get on board. So, I think that helps with that. It also helps with the mental health aspect, right? You're not taking home as much trauma. You got counselors, you got people you can talk to. That's still a tough stigma in the military. A lot of times you're not tough if you go talk to those individuals. And I think we're really now 5 years, 10 years later, getting more and more away from that. And, that causes less marital problems, right? You're going to have a lower divorce rate. You're going to have lower crime rates, lower drinking rates. All of those things are affected in some aspects. So when you talk about just the overall growth, I think the biggest thing is reducing the long-term healthcare cost and injuries of the U.S. soldier or military as a whole, and then just better longevity for everybody. And then hopefully, I do hope that it does get to a place where it actually reduces the overall expense on the U.S. government and the taxpayer.
It makes sense. It's definitely a long-term vision for a lot of people to be a part of, but it makes sense.
We appreciate that insight, Coach, just because, kind of as we said at the beginning, a lot of our memories, a lot of our stories together are 6 to 10 years ago, right? We're not as aware as just the things that you're involved with right now. So that question was super important for us just to stay up to date with you on things. And that's we know the military and just the armed forces in general is such a important part of your journey, and for you to kind of be back in that realm. And then you talk about, disabled veterans in that crisis. And, that's something that we're maybe not as aware of, but to see that there are steps being taken in the right direction and you're kind of a focal part of it, that's awesome. So we appreciate you sharing that with us.
Yeah, it's awesome too, being a veteran and being able to give back on that capacity. And it's really weird because my athletic career and my military career, they never really were able to interlock or cross paths, intersect. And now it's great to be able to, still be involved in human performance, but also around the military. There is something very special, that is missed from the collegiate realm. And the one thing that you don't get is there is a place, I think, that all your military have already gone through by the time that we're working with them. And like I said, they kind of receive that in their indoctrination and the boot camp of choice of whatever branch of service they go in. But when you're working with a collegiate athlete, specifically in a weight room, it is extremely magical because I love it when a freshman comes in, and this has happened, I don't care what sex, what sport, there's always some freshman somewhere that literally they can barely pick up a barbell. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. They just had no experience. They don't know how to move their body. They're awkward. They're uncomfortable. They're unsure of themselves. They don't have confidence, all of that. And they're somewhere in that path. Maybe it's the end of their sophomore year or the start of their junior year. And all of a sudden they're sitting there and they miss a rep. It's always happens when they miss a rep. And there's like this light bulb that comes on. And all of a sudden they get it. And their whole attitude changes. Like now it's like a switch. It's just bam. Now I've got confidence. You know what? I know how to fail. It's okay to fail. Somebody's going to support me and get in my butt and come after me when I did fail, and they're going to tell me to do it again. And guess what? That's going to be me right there. Right. So you cannot buy or replace that. And that's one thing I do miss at that collegiate level that you don't get to touch at the tactical level, I think. I love that moment in someone's life. And it's not about the weight room, but it's about that place where they decide that they are either going to commit to that process and get better, or they do kind of give up, right? And you got to be there either way. Either you're going to promote the development, or you're going to catch them on the failure and try to get them to return. But you know what? I had a lot of athletes. They come to my office, and I mean, I cried with them when they told me that that was their last day playing sports. I've seen phenomenal athletes want to pursue other things. Some of it was, well, you know, my faith tells me I need to go do this, or I'm doing bad in school and I'm supposed to be a doctor. Or, you know, I had an athlete one time come to me, literally had an invitation to the Olympic trials, female athlete, and she was pregnant. She had dreamed about the Olympics since she was a kid, and she had to make a decision. And I can't imagine making that decision. That's not for me. But I'm going to tell you what, everybody at the school, you know, really wanted her to pursue the Olympics. That was the dream, right? That was the thing. She had the talent and the gift. And as you know, that's the 1% of the 1% of the 1% of the 1%. I mean, it is wow. And she took about, I think it was about 30 days, and she thought on it. And I'll never forget when she made the announcement, and she just walked away from sports completely. And you know what? It's probably the best decision of her life. I don't know. I don't know the outcome, but you know, you got a kid, and you're content with that development, that relationship. And that's just a place in your life where you choose those things. But those are the moments that I think for me are awesome, is when that light just comes on, and you're in a better place of maturity and discipline to make those decisions. And I think it also is great to see someone fail and be in a place where they're safe to fail, right? Like, it's okay to miss that rep. We're going to come back. We'll get it tomorrow. Well, did you fail correctly? Did anybody get hurt? Did I teach you how to fall? Yes. Did I teach you how to dump the weight? Did I teach you to spot each other and take care of each other? Do you trust each other? One of you gentlemen, I think it was Ryan, I think you were talking earlier about, it's either Ryan or James. You guys were talking about the interns and them running the program when I wasn't there. Do you know what that does for their confidence to give that amount of trust?
Through the roof.
That's a lot of trust.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The liability there is ridiculous, right? But that's going back to what you guys asked me, what's it take to be a leader? It takes that kind of risk to be a leader, to put yourself in that position of trust and liability in those that have believed in your program. How do you reciprocate that? You got to give them the keys to the car. You got to. So that's about it on that, gentlemen.
Coach, I think you might, I don't know if this is occurring right now in your current role, but there might be one memory or one moment that you're missing. And I don't mean to be blunt with that. And I want to paint this picture for you. So I want to take you back to our wedding and that crowd of just Stetson alumni, right? And this message comes from not just the four of us, but all those Stetson alumni. And it goes something like this. Excuses are the tools of the incompetent.
Used to build bridges to nowhere.
Those who deal in excuses
make excuses,
make monuments out of absolutely
nothing.
It was pretty impactful. I'll say that. Yeah, but yeah, man, that's just a small tool that I've used in multiple stops. And I've always been a big fan of poetry. I've always been a big fan of classic literature. I think as we talk about the protagonists and some of the great literature, I really like to use the Odyssey, right? We talk about Perseus, or not Perseus, excuse me. We talk about Odysseus going through the Odyssey there, and just the trials and tribulations and the struggle. And I think that's the great representation of the perseverance. And it's also the test of faith, your why, your family, right? You got to get home to the wife. I I think there's so many things, and that's just one illustration. There's so many different ones. There's just a lot of classic literature, but with the poetry and those different things, that's also being a little bit more well-rounded too, right? Like, how do you impact your students with not just physical, but what's the mental expectation, and why did I do that? So let me ask you guys. That's going to be my closing question for you guys: is why do you guys believe that was indoctrinated upon you guys?
I'll jump in first. I think it's because we wanted to make excuses at the time. And we were able to kind of sit there and realize as a team when we're going through hard times, and I think we've talked about it on this podcast as well, that you got to go through hard stuff, in order to be able to deal with it when it comes up again later on in life. And you don't want to make excuses when it comes up. And so that mantra kind of stuck with us, and we could call to it when we were going through hard times, and we wanted to make those excuses, and we were able to escape that and kind of move forward and continue on.
It's kind of, we had every quote unquote reason to make that excuse. New program, all freshmen, no weight room, first year not playing, this, that, et cetera, that there was the opportunity at every corner. If you wanted to come up with an excuse, you can, and you can do that in life too. There's always an excuse you can cook up, and
every day.
It was instilling in us that you can, but here's the other side. And showing that you don't need to, and there is that other side. And I will tell you that we still say that to this day with, again, not just the four of us. So that quote is still said to this day amongst all the boys and females too. So, well,
that's grateful, man. That's powerful in itself. That's that legacy, that's that impact. And again, those are the things you can't buy. So, and that's back to, one of the things, I don't get to make that kind of touch at the military setting. It's just not there. The beauty for me, and thank God, I see a lot of human performance professionals, struggle sometimes with buy-in in the tactical setting. But for me, I'm fortunate, because being prior service and especially being in the Marine Corps, even though that has nothing to do with human performance, it's almost instant credibility. They know you've been where they are, going through those rigors, those situations, and I think it gives a little bit less judgment from their eyes on who you are as a person. Like I said, it's just a little bit more instant credibility, and I think that's a hard thing too when you come into a new program, especially like you guys at Stetson. How do I get that credibility? Well, it was easy for me. Put 500 pounds on a bar and do a squat, and everybody goes, oh, okay, this is why I want to follow this guy, because he can do what I want to do, right? And how many times have you guys seen me do things of that nature at that time? I ain't doing it right now, but back in the day, right? Right? You know what I'm saying? I mean, to earn that respect and get that instant buy-in and credibility, or I'll use a great example. What's our winter tradition is doing the Grim Reaper. Who's the first person in the morning? Go ahead and getting theirs in, right? Me. Right. 100 reps. Let's go ahead. We're getting it in. And you guys saw that. And I think that's another strong leadership trait too, is just, leadership by example. I think you do have to emulate what it is, the expectations and demands that you want to see from your team and your staff. So
we appreciate that, Coach. And
awesome.
I appreciate you guys. I know we're running up on the time.
It's all good. So. Just thank you, number one, for being one of our initial guests on this journey. And just putting yourself out there with us. Thank you for dealing with all the technical difficulties that we had to start. But no excuses.
I think that was on my end. I'm not a techie, so
no excuses.
We got there.
No excuses. We make it happen. I got two computers over here. Let's go. Got ears on one and eyes on another. We'll figure it out.
We hit on everything. We went back in the time machine and talked about Stetson. We talked about your career, mental health. Right, military, collegiate, all those things. So just thank you for taking us on that journey with you. Thank you for taking anyone listening to this on that journey. And, we just appreciate you, Coach. Thanks for always being there for us, even 10 years later.
Absolutely. And again, I just want to reciprocate. I could not be more grateful. I mean, it's amazing to be just part of you guys' journey, to see all of you, especially on this podcast. But you guys talked about some of our other fellows and the success that you guys are having in your lives, in your personal lives and careers. I'm so proud to be part of that in whatever small capacity or large capacity, because I think you guys are great examples of leaders and strong young men. And you know, there's a little bit of just that patriarchal feeling to that, you know, regardless of how small of impact, you just feel like, wow, you know, to see these guys and be where they are and be pursuing the things they have and what their whys are, and to have good morals and that integrity. That's definitely heartfelt and very humbling on my side, to be able to create that legacy, because you know, I struggled for many years with my journey in faith. You know, what I thought relationships were as far as a distraction for my career or different things. And there's some other podcasts, like I said, we'll link to this to talk about some of those other aspects of my journeys. But I just want to reciprocate that gratitude, because it's very meaningful to me. You guys are a very special group of young men and women out there at the Stetson community. And again, I'm just so grateful. And I do, you know, without a doubt, know that we created a culture I think will be forever unrivaled in that specific setting. You know, I know what came after us. And then, like I said, great coach, great methodologies, great scientific background, great administrative leadership. But the overall camaraderie, expectationship, discipline, and relying on your teammates while we were there, I think it was seen across the whole community. I literally can remember when we were coming in for like the winter workouts, when nobody didn't have to be there, like finals week, and it was an open weight room. And I would literally have somebody from lacrosse spotting a football player, or I would have a soccer player working out with a basketball player, because everybody was just taking care of each other and supporting each other as a team. And it was a fun place to be at that time. So very grateful. Thank you guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Coach. Thank you.